Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 15. Today we read from Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to Joshua 6. Yeah, we entered into Joshua today. So, jumping right into it. So, we know that yesterday we ended with God telling the Israelites the what do you call it now? The blessings that came with obedience. Here is begin to tell them what the consequences of disobedience. And let's look at it because it's terrifying. So the causes of disobedience were in daily life, body, economy, family, community, military defeat, and exile. So in their daily life, he says there will be costs in the city, costs in the field, their baskets and their kneading bowl. Their children will be caused, their crops will be cursed, their livestock will be cursed. Remember all those blessings he gave yesterday. Now this is the reverse. In their body and health, they will have diseases, they will have tumors, they will have scabs, they will have incurable illness, they would have madness, they would have blindness, they will have confusion of mind. In their economy and their labor, it says the enemies will consume their harvest, that they will plant vineyards and they will not enjoy it, and that they will work hard, but that it's others that will benefit from it. In their family, that their wives will be given to other men, their children will be taken into captivity, and that they will have social collapse and distrust. In their military, it says that their enemies will be victorious over them, that they will face siege and destruction in their cities, and for exile and oppression, that they will be scattered among the nations, and that they will live in constant fear, they won't have rest, and that they will have their lives hanging on doubt. It is terrible. And this causes actually shows the seriousness of disobedience and how they are basically the reverse of the blessings that were demonstrated, previously. The second thing was talking about the life of Rahab. So by this time, Joshua was already leading, the Israelites. Moses had been called to the Lord, and then the Joshua sent spies to go spy in Jericho, and they got in there and they entered into the house of a prostitute called Rahab. And Rahab, knowing that they were Israelites, kind of hid them because the king got intel that, spies have entered into this land. And he was looking for them, came to Rahab. She was like, they are not here. They came, but they've left and all that. If you quickly run, maybe you would find them, situation. But she hid them on a roof. And after the king's guards or whatever had gone, she went up and told them, I know who you guys are. I know you guys are coming to take this land, and I also am aware that God has given you guys this land. Such beautiful prophecy. I know that God has given you this land, but here's what I'm going to beg you, that when you guys come, you should spare me and my family. And they made a vow to her. And then when they actually did come to fight and take the land, they actually spared her. And why do I find this, should I say, interesting and beautiful? Rahab would later marry Salmon. Salmon was a king, was a prince of Judah. We didn't know this until Matthew 1:5, where it was mentioned. And she was the one who gave birth to Boaz. Boaz was the one who married Ruth. And as we know, Ruth's lineage was the one who eventually gave birth to King David and eventually the Christ from a prostitute. What is the insight from this? Rahab shows that faith, not background, determines our destiny. Your background does not determine your destiny. It is faith, what you believe in, that determines your destiny. And that God can craft anything from a life that actually has faith in Him. That is number two. Number three is the crossing of the Jordan was interesting also because it was almost similar to, crossing of the Red Sea. But in this case, God told the, Levites who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant to walk on the water. It made their feet stepped on the water. He said the flow of the river stopped and that the river piled and moved to a place called, I think, what is it called? The city of Adam. And that they stood there and all the Israelites crossed. And after they crossed, the men carrying the Ark of Covenant, crossed, and then the river flowed back. And it just shows that God repeats miracles, but in different forms. So they could have stood there and been saying, be split, all you see, wanting God to repeat exactly what they have said, what they had done previously. But God doesn't work like that. God does miracles. He can do it in different forms. Yeah, he actually can do his miracles in different forms. Doesn't always, follow, the same form. He shows his power afresh to each generation. And then by Joshua 5, verses 10 to 11, we see that they've crossed the land, and then they ate from the produce of Canaan. So they ate the grain, the unleavened bread, and roasted grain, and that the very next day the manna stopped. So all these years, God had been providing manna for them and been sustaining them, and the manna stopped. It was just a beautiful thing. And the insight here is God's provision shifts per season, and miraculous daily bread eventually ends. God's plan is not for him to give us miracle every day. You are supposed to grow, we're supposed to walk, we're supposed to put our hand into things that he can bless. Do you see? It would have been anti-God to actually put the Israelites in a place where they perpetually is just the in giving and them not doing anything. So God's provision, those kind of miraculous provision, are usually for a season. So immediately God saw that they had gotten to Canaan, they had gotten the produce of the land. There's no more need for manna, and it ended because he said that the very next day manna stopped. And then there was a particular incident in Joshua 5, 13 to 15, where it says that Joshua saw a man standing when they were near Jericho with a sword drawn. And Joshua asked him, are you for us or against us? And the man said, neither. But as a commander in the Lord's army have I come. And Joshua fell face down, and Joshua fell face down and worshipped. The insight here is that God does not take sides when it comes to human conflict. Because the Israelites were God's people. The man could have just said, I am for you. But God does not take sides in human conflicts. The real question really is whether we are aligned to his will. That's the real question. Are we aligned to him? God does not come and say, no. Are you aligned to him? Once you're aligned to God, your own is set. Just know that it means that you are the one on his side. Do you see? The fall of Jericho is actually, one of the last insights. It's the last insight, actually. We start to see a formation that, they had to actually conquer Jericho. So the formation was armed men were supposed to go ahead. Then after armed men, you had priests that were carrying 7 trumpets of ram horn, that they were after the armed men. After that, we had the priests that were carrying the Ark of Covenant. After that, we had the rear guard that was behind those that were carrying the Ark of Covenant, and then the people, and they were supposed to go round, not saying anything. The only sound that was supposed to be heard were the trumpets that were being blown. They were supposed to do it once a day. So day 1, they went round Jericho, came back. Day 2, they did that once. Then on day 7, they did that 7 times. And at the last round, they blasted a long blast of the trumpet. And that's when the people were supposed to shout. And the walls came tumbling down. And here is the thing, right? Victory sometimes, when God gives us instruction, it may seem strange. If God had told me to be the one to do that, I would have sounded weird. Just go around the wall, just dance, don't say anything, and all that. So many times God may give us unusual instructions, but we have to trust in him to know that he knows what he's doing. And I actually found that very interesting. And when they had actually defeated, Jericho, Joshua placed a curse on anyone that would try to rebuild the walls. Here was what he said in Joshua 2, verses 26. He said, "Cursed before the Lord is the one who undertakes to rebuild this city, Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn will he lay its foundations, and at the cost of his youngest will he set up the gates. And this was actually fulfilled many years later. I think about 500 years later, by King Ahab, because he set the foundation. We'll find out later. We'll read it later in, I think, First Kings. I'm not sure of the chapter. First Kings, maybe between chapter 15 to 17, thereabout. At the cost of his first son, his first son died when he undertook that project, and by the time he was completing it, his last son died. And the insight here is that God's word, whether it is a promise or a curse, it does not expire. But we have to ensure that we're on the side of the blessing and not the curse. And that is all our insight for today. See you again in day 16. Bye.